This is a video on the components of the Pungo, how to disassemble and reassemble it. Shouldn't be necessary, but if the need arises, we'll show you how we do it. First thing to talk about is safety. Make sure you're paying attention to where this needle is. It's very sharp. It's also coated with Teflon, and you don't want to stick yourself. So treat it like a sharp knife. You should be fine. Second of all, before you do anything, you want to make sure you have no gas pressure in this cartridge. Easiest way to determine that is hold it up, pull the trigger, and listen. You should hear gas hissing out of this gas port in the back here if it has any residual pressure. If it does, just keep pulling until you don't hear it anymore. If you're satisfied it's empty, then go ahead and unscrew it. Now, as you start to unscrew it, if you did have pressure in it, you just couldn't hear that, or for some other reason you did have residual pressure, when you go to turn this, it might be difficult to unscrew. If you're feeling a lot of resistance, there's a chance there's still gas pressure in there, and that's causing a strain on the threads, and that's what's making it hard to turn. Stop for a minute and just see what's going on. If you're uncomfortable at this point, you can certainly contact us, info@pungo.us, or our phone numbers, and we'll talk you through it and get you through it. The reason you don't want to unscrew this when there's pressure in it, and why it's so important, is first of all, if you go to unscrew it, as soon as it lets go, this is going to blow away in your hand. It's not going to hurt you, but it's going to make a very loud noise. It's going to scare the cat, that's for sure. You're probably going to lose this O-ring that's inside here. And more importantly, you might do quite a bit of damage inside this gas assembly here. There's O-rings in there that do not like to go from 2,000 to 0 psi quickly, and it may actually necessitate us repairing it for you. So just be careful and make sure you don't do it. So let's say we're fine. We've taken our empty cartridge out. We've set aside our cartridge cover there. Next thing we want to do is take out this gas assembly here. Now, on the early models, they have a set screw here. It's a small set screw. Now, you don't have to take it all the way out. You can, but if you do, make sure you don't lose it. Frankly, you can lose it because we don't use it anymore. We've decided not to use that set screw anymore. We want this whole assembly to come out if there's gas pressure in that thing, so that you can pull it out of the assembly. So you can just take that and save it somewhere or discard it if you want, but we recommend not even using it anymore. Now that that's out, you can unscrew this part. Now, should just come out. It might be a little difficult. It might be slippery. You can use a rag or something else. I think this is a weight strap. Get a little more friction on it. Once you unscrew it, you get to a certain point past the thread, you can just pull it off. Now, looking at this, the way this works is when you pull the trigger, there's a cam in there, pushes down this button here. That piston goes through and lets gas come out through this orifice. You can inspect this, inspect the O-rings for dirt, tears, any kind of damage. Same with this, same within here, this O-ring here. Just visually inspect, make sure everything's fine. Don't lose this washer. This is a nylon washer, and doesn't look like much, but the thickness of it actually corresponds to the height of this pin, and the two work together, so please don't lose that washer. If this looks good, set it aside. Now you've got the housing with the trigger and the front on it. I'm going to take that off now. I usually just hold it this way. You're holding the two pieces together. 7/64 Allen wrench or hex key. Unscrew those. Turn it over, drop them out. Whoops, a little more. There we go. Whoops, there we go. Alright, set those aside. Now, set this on the table, pull up on the trigger while holding the base, and there you go. Now, this time, this cam pin, and I'm glad it came out, this cam pin came out attached to the front. That just comes loose there. This is what we call a cam pin, and it inside here, I'll show you the cam in a minute, but this is basically a pivot point. So you can set that aside. Your front cover with your trigger, you can set that aside. Now you're looking at the inside, and what we're going to do next is we're going to take out this whole fluid assembly. This is all one piece. All this stainless steel is all brazed together into one unit. Now, when you go to pull it out, there's just one thing you need to do first. There's a spring in here, back behind the spout, and the spring is in a pocket, and that keeps it aligned. Now you want to pull it out of the pocket just a little bit so it can come out. Otherwise you're going to stretch the spring and possibly damage it. You can just use a flat bladed screwdriver. It's kind of hard to see, but put that in between a couple of the coils of the spring, push down, pull forward a little bit. It's now out of the pocket, it's ready to come forward. The cam is loose. If this pin hadn't come out with the front, which sometimes it doesn't, it stays inside there, you can pull the pin out with the pliers. Just be very careful, don't scratch up the end. It shouldn't take much effort, just pull it out. The cam is now floating in there. The spring is out of its pocket. I merely put my fingers behind here, put my thumb here, pull forward, and you see it all comes out. I've got the spring still in it. That's the spring I was talking about. You set that aside. And in here, that's the cam. Set that aside. Alright, now you've got the main housing. This is all one piece. All aluminum. There's nothing left to take apart. Your PRV, we covered this in another video, but that's this hole here. There's a ball in there. The reason I pulled that up from the table is, you know, if your PRV was loose, you don't want to pull it apart like this and have it fall all over and land on the floor or something. So we set that aside. Now your fluid assembly here is made up of this assembly of stainless steel parts. They're all brazed together. Inside that bore, there's an O-ring down at the bottom. And then this is a valve. This is a Delrin valve with an O-ring on it. And that just slides in that bore. You can inspect these O-rings as well. And that should be sliding up and down freely. But a little bit of resistance. That's what stops the wine from flowing from here through the spout. Alright, so that's your fluid assembly. Now, let's say we're going to put it all back together. Pretty much the reverse. A few tricks. First of all, on this one, I'm going to replace this O-ring here on the bottom. We've got a new O-ring that we prefer. This is a round O-ring. There's nothing wrong with it, but this one we think is a little better. Alright, this is an extra O-ring. It's got a little more compression, a little more sealing. You can dip it in a little water and it'll go in easier. Just push it into that. It might be a little hard to get it started, but once you get it started, it goes in pretty easily. There we go. Run your finger around. Should, again, be careful with that needle. And there you go. Alright, so now I've got my new O-ring in there. The other thing I'm replacing is the cam. We've come up with a new cam. The old one was aluminum. The new one is a Delrin plastic. Now the reason for this, if you go back to the PRV video, we talk about how it's possible with a brand new gas cartridge and a full bottle of wine, if you really yank on the trigger, you can cause it to reach a pressure that makes the PRV pop. So it's just a nuisance. This new cam, what it does is it flexes a little bit, so it kind of acts as a little bit of a governor, a restrictor. It just kind of calms the action down at the high end of pressure. and it's just turned out to be a little bit better improvement. So I'm going to put the new cam in, and either cam goes in the same way. First thing to do is take your your needle assembly here, put your spring back in, make sure your O-rings are in there and everything's working good. Now when you go to put this in, there's a little bit of a trick. You want to put that spring under this front cover a little bit, just to catch it and compress it. And then you push up and slide this dovetail disc into this dovetail groove. Now, as you can see, it's just started and the spring's in there. Now I push the spring back a little bit, push this in a little bit, and I stop there. And the reason I do that, it's easier to put the cam in now, and the cam fingers, you can see there, go around that spring. So I'm going to put that in. And it's a little tricky, but I can hold it there with my thumb, and I can start to push in the spring, the entire valve assembly, and the cam all kind of at once. And now this valve assembly is seated, the cam's in place. That spring is still not in its pocket, so I'm going to use my screwdriver. You can use your chopstick too, less chance of scratching anything. And I'm just pushing that over into its pocket, and I just heard it snap, so it just popped into its little counterboy there. Alright, so now you've got the spring in its pocket, the whole needle assembly is seated, the cam's in the right place. We just need to put the cam pin back in. It goes through the cam, and in the back there's a mating hole, and it should be easy to fit in there. Now you see that's in there, the cam can now pivot. Don't know if you could see this, but if you raise that cam, it's pivoting now on that thing. So when you pull the trigger, those two fingers are on either side of that black valve that we just put in. That comes up, lifts the cam in, pushes the other cam into the cam down, and that's what pushes on this gas button and lets the gas in. That's part of our double acting needle assembly, where the first pull of the trigger opens up the wind port, the second part puts the gas in. The reason for that is you can't ever add gas to a closed system, and you don't ever want to add gas to a closed system. So that times everything, so it occurs in the correct order. Okay, so now we've got our new cam in, we've got our new O-ring in, and everything's looking good. Our pressure relief ball is in there and seated. Cover goes back on, again, slide it under, line up the cam pin holes, and that's done. Take our cap screws, socket head cap screws, take our Allen wrench, tighten those up. No need to go tight. A little bit, but don't overdo it. No need to strip those. You've got the whole assembly now. You're going to replace the gas assembly. Just push that straight in. See these O-rings here. 2 O-rings. You've already inspected those. Everything looks good. Just push that in, and then you'll feel it seat. Now you've engaged the threads. You start turning. Just needs to be hand tight. Make sure you go, well, you try to get it all the way, it's fine. Once you put the new cartridge on, it'll finish it up if it's not all the way there. That's ready to go. Take your new cartridge. I'm going to put a used one in here, but screw it on, and there you go, you're back in action. So not very difficult to do, but a little bit of finesse getting that cam back in and that spring back in correctly, but you'll figure it out. It's not difficult. If you have any problems or questions, don't hesitate to contact us. It's info@pungo.us, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible, and we'll talk you through it. We'll get you back in action. All right. Well, thanks for watching, and hope that was instructional. And you know, enjoy your Pungo. Thanks.